The Americas were inhabited by millions of people for thousands of years before Christopher Columbus arrived there in 1492. But did you know that he was the first non-native to set foot on the continent? Before Columbus was a famous explorer, a man from Mali named Mansa Abubakar II crossed the Atlantic Ocean and made landfall in the Americas. And he wasn't just an explorer. He was a powerful ruler who led his empire to become one of the richest and most influential in history. In this episode, we uncover the evidence that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Mansa Abubakar II really did discover America before Columbus. The year is 1311, and the place is Niani, the capital city of the MaliEmpire, located in present-day Mali. For over 2 decades, Niani has been the center of one of the largest empires in history, controlling much of modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, and parts of Egypt and Sudan. It was during this time that Mansa Abubakar II became the ruler of the vast empire after the death of his father, Mansa Musa. Under Mansa's rule, the Mali Empire reached its peak in terms of wealth and power. It controlled the trade routes to gold and salt mines in West Africa and had strong ties with North African Muslim merchants. Mansa Musa, known for his piety, decided to embark on a pilgrimage to Mecca. He assembled a massive convoy that included tens of thousands of Muslims from his empire and beyond. When they arrived in Mecca, Mansa Musa gifted immense amounts of gold to all passers-by, so much so that it practically became worthless for about 10 years. But Mansa's story doesn't end there. After completing his pilgrimage, he turned his attention to the Atlantic Ocean, which at the time was practically unknown to Africans. With the help of Muslim navigators, he assembled a fleet of ships and began exploring the coast of West Africa. In today's terms, it would be like if the President of the United States assembled a navy and started sailing around Antarctica. Abubakar's fleet traveled along the coast, discovering new lands and trading with local inhabitants. They sailed past modern-day Senegal and Gambia until they reached the mouth of the Sierra Leone River. Here they encountered the indigenous people and traded with them before continuing their journey. But little did they know that they were about to make history. As they sailed further into the ocean, they encountered rough waves and strong winds. Soon they found themselves in uncharted territory, far away from the shores of Africa. But instead of panicking, the experienced sailors kept a sharp lookout for land. After many days at sea, they finally spotted it, a lush green island in the distance. As they approached the shore, they realized that they had never seen such tall trees or such beautiful plants and animals. They had landed in the Caribbean, most likely on the island of Trinidad. When the explorers returned to Mali, they shared their stories with Mansa Abubakar, who decided to keep the discovery a secret. You might be wondering why he didn't want anyone to know about the Americas. Well, it's because he knew that if other European rulers found out about this new land, they would try to conquer it and exploit its resources and people. So he kept the discovery a secret, only telling a few trusted advisors. However, word eventually got out, and soon traders and explorers from all over Africa were heading to the Americas in search of riches. These voyages remained hidden from Europeans for decades, allowing the African explorers to establish trade routes and settlements in the Americas long before Columbus arrived. It's important to note that during this time period, Africans were not seen as explorers or adventurers by Europeans. They were considered savages, and the idea that they could have explored the Americas was unthinkable. But the evidence tells a different story. Arab and Venetian merchants who traveled to Mali during this time wrote about the empire's wealth and power, but also about its advanced shipbuilding capabilities. They described how the Malians built ships that were used for fishing and trade, as well as for warfare. Some historians even believe that the Malians had a sophisticated understanding of navigation and used tools like astrolabes to determine their location and direction. With such advanced technology, it's not surprising that some Malians would have ventured further into the Atlantic Ocean and stumbled upon the Americas. Despite the evidence, mainstream history books have ignored the Malians' role in the discovery of the Americas. This is most likely due to the fact that Europeans wanted to maintain the narrative that they were the first to explore and conquer these lands. However, with the help of historians and researchers, the truth is slowly being revealed. One of the main pieces of evidence that supports the theory that the Malians discovered America is the presence of African artifacts found in the Caribbean. These artifacts include items like pottery, textiles and tools that are similar to those found in Mali and other parts of West Africa. Carbon dating has shown that some of these artifacts are from the 13th century, which predates Columbus's arrival by several decades. There are even reports of early Spanish explorers finding buildings and structures in the Caribbean that were built in an African architectural style. Although these structures have since been destroyed, the accounts of the explorers provide valuable insight into the possibility of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. Another piece of evidence comes from the oral histories of indigenous peoples in the Americas. Many of these stories are about a group of dark-skinned people who arrived in the Americas long before Columbus. These people were said to have come from a land far away across the ocean and brought with them new technologies and knowledge. While these stories may seem like just myths and legends, they could very well be based on real events. After all, many cultures around the world have similar stories about people traveling across the ocean and making new discoveries. Despite the evidence, many historians still argue that the Malians did not discover America. They claim that it is impossible that Africans could have developed the technology needed to build ships capable of crossing the Atlantic Ocean. However, this argument ignores the fact that Africans were known for their advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. They had developed sophisticated systems of government, law, and medicine, and their innovations in architecture and art were highly advanced. To assume that they could have built ships capable of transatlantic travel is nothing short of arrogance and ignorance. In fact, there is evidence that the Malians had access to advanced shipbuilding techniques and materials that would have made it possible for them to build ships capable of crossing the Atlantic. For example, the Malians had access to large quantities of timber from the rainforests of West Africa, which would have been ideal for building ships. They also had access to iron ore, which they used to make tools and weapons, as well as copper and brass. These materials would have been essential for building the rigging and other components of a ship. Furthermore, the Malians had access to the knowledge of Arab and Persian engineers who were experts in shipbuilding. These engineers had developed advanced shipbuilding techniques that would have been perfect for building ships capable of long-distance travel. In fact, Arab and Persian merchants were known to use dhows, a type of ship that was specifically designed for long-distance travel across the oceans. The Malians could have easily adopted this design and used it to build their own ships. Moreover, the Malians had a strong incentive to explore the Atlantic Ocean. They had already established extensive trade networks across West Africa and the Mediterranean Sea. Exploring the Atlantic would have opened up new trade routes and allowed them to access new markets and resources. In fact, the Malians were known for their love of adventure and exploration. They had a strong tradition of sending out expeditions to explore new lands and bring back valuable goods. Given their adventurous spirit, it's highly unlikely that they would have missed out on exploring the Americas. The evidence is clear. The Malians had the technology, resources, and motivation to explore the Atlantic Ocean and discover the Americas. It's time to stop ignoring their contributions to history and give them the credit they deserve. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment below. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more informative and entertaining videos about unsung heroes of history. Thanks for watching.